So I talked about HIV and abortion and some of the other podcasts. Hello, this is the Ba.Bl podcast. I am Xochitl, your host. And if your question is, well, if somebody has HIV, shouldn't shouldn't that be the medical reason why they should have an abortion? Well, I mean, the great thing about not having the abortion as a person with HIV is that a lot of people with, or shouldn't people, because people are saying, shouldn't people with HIV have an abortion? That's the other thing. To talk to the other side is that people with HIV often, their websites, Tinder type things for people with HIV, people with AIDS, people with herpes, etc. And they date each other and they meet each other and they find each other and they fall in love with each other and they get married to each other and they have babies with each other. So if a person with HIV or AIDS has a baby with somebody else who has HIV or AIDS and the baby has HIV or AIDS, that is what we call a family. And it's not unlike if a little person meets a little person and the two little people get married and they have a little baby. That's a family. It's a family, a working family. They love each other and, help each other have a good life together. That's what that's about. So just because somebody has HIV doesn't mean that they just should have an abortion and they shouldn't exist in this world. They have to teach their kids, obviously, how to stay safe in the prevention of their illness to other children, etc. But it does happen. So I think the concern is that the banning of abortion will be a problem if people with HIV have babies. Well, it's not the problem that people with HIV or AIDS have babies. It's the problem that I'll tell you how it becomes a problem. So HIV and drug addiction are two very different things, right? And you can have a family with HIV and AIDS, but drug addiction is a disease. It's a bad disease. There's not too many positive things that come from having a family of drug addicts, right? Although some of them are really big stars and they have a lot of money, it still causes a lot of mental issues and emotional stuff, in the children, etc. But it's a different kind of disease where you can not do it. So the baby doesn't actually have a chance at life the way other babies do because they're born an addict if they're born from somebody who is taking drugs, right? But however, just like their parents, they can stop taking drugs. They can choose not to do it, but oftentimes they suffer from mental illness or depression, schizophrenia, etc. And it can be really severe whether or not they take drugs and commit suicide. Suicide is, a problem in those situations. So they're not given a chance at life. It's not that, the abortion for a drug addict or the abortion for a person with HIV or AIDS is better than the other, or that because one is more livable and has the option to stop taking drugs, that it's a better life lived, safer for everybody else, because you can contract diseases from doing drugs. number one. But it's quality of life. I always talk about quality of life. And then it's also the life lived. So I remember there was this little girl who had HIV, and she was an activist at 10 years old. She was on Oprah. Some of you may remember this little black girl had HIV, and she used to talk about it all over the country. She had a book or something. And so they know they're not going to have the life everybody else has. And once it turns into AIDS, it's going to be terminal, so they may not live very long. Drugs are, and research is better today than it was 30 years ago, 30 years ago. But so they can have their healthy families, aside from the disease, they can have healthy family lives. And I don't think that drug addiction really qualifies as a healthy lifestyle for children to be brought up in. I think most people will agree with that. Some people may not, I don't know. So when we're talking about reasons for an abortion or a medical abortion, I don't even think that we should think about the age of the human, but that is a human life, right? Period. It's a human life, okay? So a baby kitten in the belly is not an animal. It's an animal. So a fetus in the belly is a human life, right? That's the way you want to think about it. So that's what we'll talk. That's how we'll talk about it. There are people in red states, by the way, Republican states that support and practice the death sentence in prisons. And so you have a person, I heard a joke about this, a comedian telling a joke about this, you may have heard it on the internet, but it is a reality. There is a person that is hired to inject and kill murderers, like people with the death sentence. And so they do that a couple times a day. They go home, they go to sleep, watch TV, whatever, get up the next day and they do it again. It's their job. So we talk about reasons for death, reasons for killing a human. Let's not think about the age, because human life is human life. At fetus is human life. At 80, it's human life. As an adult, it's a human life. The reasons for death. Republican red states agree with the death sentence, but also want to ban abortions for the killing of fetuses. And so here's the thing: when I talk about HIV and drug addiction, people having babies with HIV and drug addiction, or disabilities, whatever, is that we have to talk about the reasons in which we would abort, right, a human, and the reasons in which we would kill an adult human. Is there really a good reason? Because here's what will happen. If you prevent abortion, women who are pregnant from abusers, the abuser may not have wanted them to become pregnant and may consider it their fault because their pill didn't work, or they weren't on a pill, or they missed a day, or whatever. That even though they're only 90-something%, proof it's not 100%, somehow it's the woman's fault. And so a lot of times you don't hear about it on TV, but these women are murdered with their babies. So you have 2 lives gone because this woman was not allowed to abort one. Other times, the woman, the pregnant woman, will have an abuser or not, or a rapist, or just doesn't want to be pregnant. A person with the wrong mind, an actual murderer, gets pregnant, doesn't want the man, and kills him. So now you have a murder on your hands regardless. You have people dead. Humans are dying. More and more humans are dying. The effect of this then is filling up the prisons with murderers. So how the red states support the banning of abortion is like saying they understand nothing of the prison system and how the actual laws on murder work. Because they don't consider it. They consider it the same thing, but not if they're the ones that are the cause of it. So it's sort of hypocritical in that the reality, and I think Kamala Harris understands this because she came from corrections in California. She worked corrections in California, or was involved with corrections in California. It's just the prison system. And that's where my mom knew her. So she understands how if you take a right away or take something away, how it will trickle into a bunch of other little crimes here and there that will eventually end up with a bunch of worse crimes and criminals that will end up filling up the prisons. We just legalized weed because the real reason we legalized weed is not because you voted for it. It was legalized because there were too many people in prison over it and they were too full. They couldn't build more prisons. They found as a better solution to let go of the people, to let the weed slide. Everybody's doing it. It's more and more people. It's too many people. Legalize it. And maybe they'll stop doing it on their own. So that's why. But all the space is filled. All of the empty space in prison now is going to be filled up with people who are killing other humans over the babies that they could have aborted, whether or not the baby will be born, and how the baby how they got pregnant, and whose baby it is, and who they cheated on, and all those things. Murders will happen, and the majority of the cases we will see in the next few years is people going to prison over pregnancies, the jealousies of the pregnancies and the anger of the pregnancies and the abuse of the pregnancies. That's what we're going to see. It's going to fill up the prisons. And I think that's part of the reason why she's against the banning of abortion. She's against the banning of abortion because she knows that it's not about filling the prisons, but that people will murder each other. We'll have so many human deaths. And so you want to talk about reasons for killing a fetus. It's a human life. So we're just going to have multiple human lives gone, dead, killed, murdered. And why does it matter how old they are? The whole thing about abortion is preventing some of those other worse things that could happen. Because I think what we don't want is just a bunch of people murdering each other. We'll end up back where we started. Have you ever seen that movie, Gangs of New York? That's going to be the world we live in. Everybody's just going to be murdering each other and randomly getting pregnant and trying to figure out whose baby it is. And actually, I feel like that's kind of scary. I feel like that's kind of scary. Yeah, because then there will be people with HIV and drug addicts that know if they do have sex with you, if they rape you, you have to have their baby. They will know that. And some people are crazy. My mom's worked in this prison system. I'm not kidding you. People are crazy enough to do that kind of thing on purpose. So, I mean, stay off the streets. It's where we're headed. So, if we vote for Trump, and I know you're thinking right now, if you're a Trumpster, you're thinking, oh, that's ridiculous. That's like really going far into. It's not the world you live in. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because it doesn't exist for you, doesn't give you the right to make those decisions for people who it does exist for, because that's who it affects. It doesn't affect you. So I get it, you don't care, but you need to, because it's a national problem. It's federal law that makes it a national problem. It's not just in your state or in your city or in another state and in another city. It will end up being your next door neighbor. I live in a very nice area, the nicest area in town. Some places are gated, there's security, etc. There have been murders here. Make no mistake, those minds you don't know where they're gonna be living. Okay, so don't be so naive and think that it can't be you or that it can't be your neighbor. And we're talking about quality of life for children, but then we're also talking about reasons for death. That reasons for death, you try to find really good reasons for death, for the death sentence, and you claim that there's not a good enough reason to abort a baby. But I think that you're just not thinking ahead. The possibilities that if you ban abortion, people are not allowed to abort one baby, that it could cause the murder of two people or more. I've heard stories of people in prison. Of course, you watch the Snap shows like that on TV, right? But I've seen worse stories that are not told on TV, and how they kill children after they're born, if they don't believe they're theirs, or even when they know that they're theirs. They're just nutcases, and they do terrible things to babies. Drug addicts, people who have mental illnesses. I have one, and I defend, I advocate for our rights, but I'm not gonna lie, some of them are dangerous, really dangerous. If they're not medicated, it's worse. And so there's a lot of that. If these people have babies, there's a risk. It doesn't mean they shouldn't have babies, but I've heard horror stories. People not just with mental illness, but people who are considered sane, and they kill their babies, and they kill the mothers. And on defense, the mother has to try to kill the father. And so I'm saying this because I think no one talks about realities. They just talk about the politics and the laws. And there are no real stories that anybody wants to talk about. I think they get passed on because there's too much politics. And so I want to focus on this one thing so that we fully understand what could happen here, because that's his biggest topic and the number one reason he's using to get in the big seat again. So yeah, reasons for death of a human, there's not a good one, right? We could, if we have the prison system, could put them in prison, but you have the death sentence in some states. Reasons for death, if we want to keep the death sentence, there's some amount of it that's legal for some people, mainly the law. Well, if we are to prevent multiple deaths over something like a pregnancy or babies, that I think is better. Prevention is better, because I think what can happen is a little girl can get an abortion and run away. But if she runs away pregnant, she could die. And that's a difficult thing to think about, because that's two deaths. It's not just the baby, but it's her and the baby. And if she wasn't thinking about having an abortion, why is it okay for her and the baby to die? So prevention is like, you're gonna die if you don't do this, so you have to do this. And it's not always because there's something medically wrong with you. It's because of your life situation, the people in your life, whether or not you can live somewhere that you are living in at the current time. It's so many, like I said before, there's so many situations that people will need, not just want, but need to have an abortion, that have nothing to do with medical issues. It's not just as simple as saying, oh, well, they come from an abusive family. It's deeper. It's not always your family. It's not always your family. It's not even always friends of family or your friends at school. Teachers do this to kids. Random people kidnap kids, the same kind of random people are talking to your kids when they're outside and having them at their house for an hour every now and again to do things you're not there for. Neighbors, they may not kidnap them, but take them somewhere else in their van and then drop them off at home. Make them believe that they're loved. It's a lot of stupid shit, excuse my language. But any situation you can think of. I mean, and these girls, I mean, when I'm talking about that, you may think that I'm talking about kids underage, but I'm 40 plus. I mean, kids to me, if you're 25, you're a kid. That can happen to a young woman that is already an adult age, right? And like, there's people that don't think it can happen to them because of where they live and the lifestyle that they lead, and just don't think it's right to have an abortion because they think it's killing a baby. The same household will have a 25-year-old daughter who just doesn't see herself in those situations, but may not, but because of that naivety, it could possibly already be happening to her. And you never know who it's going to happen to. So it's not always rape, but you don't know who you're dating. People get out of prison and they won't tell you for quite some time that that was their situation. And you don't know if they're going to go back, if they're going to be triggered rapists. They want to date. They think they've been through therapy and they're okay. And they want to date. You don't know their situation. They may have a really good job, make money, have a nice apartment. You don't know. Well, we have people in TV who come out of prison, have moved on, obviously, and Robert Downey Jr., Richard Cabral, have moved on. So obviously they're probably not going to end up back in and get back to their communities, a lot, that kind of thing. But I'm saying that they're public. Their lives are public, so that is all public information. There are people in that same level of wealth or whatever, and may not be famous, but have been in prison. And you don't know who they are. But if they're not public figures, there's less of a reason for them not to go back into old behaviors. Everything has to be watched. People have to go through therapy. There's a lot of stuff that I think just people think, oh, well, incest just means their dad raped them or their brother raped them or like their cousin or something. That just is in their mind. And then they hear deaths happen around the world of women who are having children. They think, oh, well, they didn't go to the doctor, so they didn't have the right care, and they were poor or whatever. I need to tell you, everybody in the abortion clinic, people who need abortions are not just broke girls with nowhere to go. I am telling you that these women will not go on camera and tell you this about their lives because of their status. I'm not ashamed of my life. I've moved on. I've done better things. I'm working on myself every day. I've had therapy, etc. I'm good. And, things happen to me, and that's my past. And I've never been to jail. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict, but things have happened to me in my past. And so I'm not ashamed because it's made me who I am today. And I think there's just a lot of women who are ashamed by their communities and the places where they live, their lifestyle that they lead. It's too hard to come out and tell their real stories. So I'm telling you, it exists. And don't think it can't happen to you. When you talk about reasons for death, how you can decide to murder a murderer, a non-murderer murdering a murderer makes them a murderer, yes, but that person gets to live a normal life. And then deciding that a woman has no emotional connection to a baby before it's grown enough cannot make the same decision. when there's no father, or when the father doesn't know or doesn't want it either. I mean, the bottom line is we cannot make these decisions for other people. But it should be your right to make that decision for yourself. That's all I'm saying. Because nobody else knows your situation, how much danger you're in, where you're headed, etc. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Last time I said it was the last thing I had to say. This time, I don't know. But one thing after the other, so many different situations. I don't have to name them all, but I think my point here was the reasons for death and how, in the quality of life of a child who is born from a drug addict versus the quality of life of a person that's born with HIV, and how one is like a family and the other one is quite a little bit more difficult to grow up in. Although it appears some of the HIV can also develop depression and schizophrenia or whatever. I think that if you're building a family, you have that support system. And being in a family, you know, where your mom is a drug addict, she may not be in your life. She may have died early in your life. May have been a prostitute. I mean, this is severe trauma. And not that that person doesn't deserve life, right? I'm not saying that at all. There's not a person that doesn't deserve life, or at least a chance at it. But if we're talking about reasons for death and preventing, and it's like that saying, and this is a terrible way to put it, but, you know, all for one and one for all. That's not something that works for every situation, everything in life. But I think that it's, if you're faced, the only way to understand this best is if you've been faced with the you or me, it's you or me, or if you're pregnant, it's the baby or you, when it's causing, like my situation, it was causing me a lot of pain. I thought I was going to die. And so the only way to really truly understand those two different things, the reasons for death or the reason for murder, however you want to look at it, and the quality of life of the child, and, you know, how to make that decision. There's just nobody who knows it better than if you've been in those situations where it's you or the other. Because you don't know that if you have the baby, if the baby's gonna live and you're not, or if it's gonna be both of you that die. So you have to make decisions. And when you're in other situations where you're faced with a murderer, it really is life or death because somebody wants to kill you over this. You then also have to think that it could be the female and the baby, or a pregnant woman murders the father and ends up in prison. So now you have a baby growing up with a mother, partially in prison with the mother, and then growing up with a mother in prison their whole lives. For the sake of their lives, that may seem like, oh, what a great thing, my mom saved my life. But if your mom saved your life, what is the mental trauma of understanding that saving a life lands you in prison? It's too much crap. I'm trying to not say bad words, too much crap, you know. And there's no solutions to these problems being given by the people who want the ban. If you can't offer solutions to those problems while you are promoting the ban, then you're just going to be the cause of a ton of deaths. So either there's the deaths caused by abortion, or there's just 2 times as many deaths because there's no abortion. I don't know. It's up to you to weigh it out. We have the right to vote, right? Thank God we have the right to vote. But if we go backwards and take a right away from women, if we take a woman's right away, it's taking an equal right away, it's taking a human right away. We go backwards, it'll be another one, and another one, and another one. Because what are the solutions? We ban abortion, we don't want to unban abortion. And then what are the solutions to the problems of those murders? Prison, more prison. We got to figure out how to legalize something else so that other criminals can get out of prison, so we can make more room for the new murderers to go into prison. Then we still have the gun control issue. That's going to be part of the reasons for some of these deaths. And so what I'm talking about here is the very real hypocrisy in the red states within Republicans that just don't fully think things through. That's all I'm saying. You need to think it through. And even if you're not for the banning of the abortion and you want Trump as president for some other odd reason, don't do it. This is around the world, and I mean actually around the world in other countries, around the world, a stupid decision. Everybody thinks that we are insane because just the allowing of him to run again. So there's the Democratic Party just really trying to get the Republicans on our side about this. So just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you have to vote for Trump. I know a lot of people think that you have to vote for whatever the Republican Party wants. You don't have to. It doesn't make you not Republican. It doesn't change your beliefs. It doesn't change your religion. It doesn't change what you think is right or wrong. But not voting for a president means that he's not fully on the same page as you are. And maybe you don't think that he has really great plans, really thought out plans. And so there's no shame in voting for the other side. It's really about who's going to make the better leader. I know you want lower taxes. Everybody wants lower taxes. But like I said about wiping the table clean, there's a lot of other things that you have to take care of first. So you want less junk mail. I get it. You don't want mail all over the table, but first you have to go through the junk mail. You can just throw it all out, but you're going to get more in the mail tomorrow. So you can't solve the problem unless you unsubscribe to some things or call some people and say, stop mailing me, number one. But there's a lot of other things to wiping the slate clean, right? That's all I'm talking about, is that when I see the work of Harris's choice for vice president in his state, and actually was there just the other day. I was like, wow, this place is great. I would actually live here. I never want to leave California, but I would actually live there. It was awesome. And I think that with that kind of experience of putting plans into place and fully looking at every problem to come up with solutions so that it can work, so it can all work, and people will be living a happier, healthier life all around the state, that says to me that he's pretty qualified to be able to figure out how to do that for the nation. And those are the kind of leaders I look for. I don't look for leaders who are just really great at slinging the right words out at you that go together, that seem like they know what they're talking about, but don't actually give you any really good solutions to any problems. Or I think that Trump's vice president was very vague in everything that he was asked, and he's very polite, a very nice man. That doesn't always make you the best leader. I think he's wishy-washy with the way he's voted in the past is very wishy-washy, and he's just doing something for his status so that he could get in the presidency next time. And I don't think that would make a great president either. So that's my personal opinion. I think there's much better laws in place in the areas that were governed by the Democratic Party. That's it. For president and vice president right now. And so I feel like they're just a better choice. They make better plans, and we need to make it easier for them to put them into place so that we can have more rights, so we can live a better life and be stronger together. Thank you for watching the Ba.Bl. I'll see you next time.